How do you handle a creative child? That's the question I'm going to try to answer today in my talk. I'm Kevin O'Brien, and I used to be a creative child. In fact, I still am, because I haven't grown up. Anyway, I've done lots of things in my career that are creative, teaching among them for Homeschool Connections, which I love. In addition to that, I'm going to screen share and show you some of the other things I've done. This is stuff from EWTN, where I host a series called The Theater of the Word. That's me as Father Brown, G.K. Chesterton's priest detective, me as J.R.R. Tolkien, and that's me as some of the characters I do in my interactive comedy murder mystery dinner theater shows, which we've been producing around the country for 30 years. So I've had quite a career, and it's all been doing stuff that's creative. So how do you handle a creative child? Well, not only was I one, but I had some. My son Colin did this when he was probably 10 years old. We had hamburgers, I think, or French fries with ketchup and mustard. And so he took the ketchup and he made a face. There's a little mustard there too, as you can see. And we've kept this for 15 years. We've had this. A work of art. My daughter, Carrie, is also creative. I don't know how well you'll be able to see this with the lighting, but it's her checklist. And on her checklist, when she was about 7 years old, 8 years old, she made this. What does she have to do every day? Eat candy, watch TV. Eat candy, watch TV. Eat candy, watch TV. And unfortunately, I don't know if you can tell, but she only did her chores on Saturday. And the only thing she did on Saturday was she ate candy. So as you can see, I've had some interesting and creative kids, and I've been pretty creative and interesting myself. I want to address not just what you do as a homeschooling mother or father with a child who may be very different, unpredictable, and unusual, and certainly different from you. I don't just want to address that. I want to investigate, what does it mean to be creative? What does it mean to be artistic? And I don't just mean artistic in the way of painting with ketchup and mustard. I mean, anything we do that's creative, writing, music, sculpting, dance, anything we do that expresses some sort of imaginative desire. Well, to try to address that and to try to see what it means not only in our families, but in our relationship with God, I want to take a look at this PowerPoint that I put together. What do you do with a creative child? Here's G.K. Chesterton. He calls art the signature of man. Now, rather than read the quotation from his book, The Everlasting Man, I'm just going to paraphrase it, which might make it a bit easier to understand. Chesterton, in that book, talks about the cave paintings that were discovered in his day, or even before. These cave paintings, I think in the 19th century, were discovered and were found to be tens of thousands of years old. You've probably seen reproductions of them. Usually they're of deer or some sort of creature, and they're done with a great deal of style by cavemen. Chesterton says we think of cavemen, we think of brutes who drag their wives around by the hair and beat them up with clubs. But no, even when men still lived in caves, we were men and women. We were human beings set apart from all the rest of creation, because no other creature on earth does anything that's artistic. Chesterton says it's not as if chimpanzees were primitive artists and then orangutans modern artists. It's not as if cart horses were impressionists and race horses post-impressionists. No other animal attempts this. And when art appears, tens of thousands of years ago, it appears out of nowhere by a creature who does it for a reason that maybe we can begin to understand. First of all, what does art do? If you look at one of the cave paintings, or at any painting, or at a good movie, or if you listen to a beautiful work of music, or even if you look at a beautiful photograph, you will see differently. You will see life differently. You will be awakened again to something that you got used to and inured to. Therefore, This is something that J.R.R. Tolkien talks about. He says, we live in a tired and cynical age. We have grown ill. We need recovery. We should look at green again and be startled anew by blue and yellow and red. We should meet the centaur and the dragon, and then perhaps suddenly behold, like the ancient shepherds, sheep and dogs and horses and wolves. This recovery fairy stories help us to make. I would say all fiction, all art. In that sense, only a taste for them may make us or keep us childish. He talks about Moori folk. What is Moori folk? Well, it's Tolkien's borrowing of a word used by Dickens. Moori folk is coffee room spelled backwards. If you're on the inside of the coffee room and you look through the window, you'll see it spelled backwards. In other words, you'll see something very ordinary in a new and unexpected way. So if you're following me so far, art is the signature of man. It's something that no other creature does. It's something that reawakens in the consumer or the audience of art a new worldview or a new outlook on things that we may have taken for granted or become accustomed to. But there's one more thing that Tolkien mentions. This is from a poem he wrote to C.S. Lewis. And I'm going to skip down here. I think you can see me highlighted. Though all the crannies of the world we filled with elves and goblins, though we dared to build gods and their houses out of dark and light and sowed the seeds of dragons, 'twas our right, used or misused. That right has not decayed. We make still by the law in which we're made. In other words, we are made in the image and likeness of God. God is a creator, and he gives us an analogous or a similar power, charism, ability, gift. God is the creator. We are sub-creators. God creates ex nihilo out of nothing. We recreate with the material that God has given us. Now, as Tolkien points out, this can be a gift that is used or abused. There can be good art. There can be bad art. You certainly know that about movies and TV shows and music. As good homeschooling parents, there's probably quite a bit you will not allow your children to be exposed to in this day and age. Because even though people can have a good deal of technical skill in making music or in making TV shows or what have you, they can use that skill to create things that poison the soul. And yet it is in our nature to do these things. It's the signature of man. It reawakens a new recovery of experience, a new revitalization of our attitude toward things we had gotten used to, and used or misused, we are makers who are made. Since we are made in the image and likeness of God, then we who are made become makers. So Tolkien saw this as a profoundly important function. Going back to the screen share here. Why am I showing this picture of Our Lady? Well, first of all, it's a beautiful picture. I took this photo of a painted glass window, a stained glass window with some painting as well. It's in a church here in the Archdiocese of St. Louis, where I live, by the Emile Fry Studios, which is based in St. Louis. And they've done beautiful stained glass over the years. And as you can see, this is a stunningly beautiful picture of Our Lady. How does she fit into this? Well, I'll give you a hint. My soul magnifies the Lord. She does what we should all do as Christians. She does what we should all do as artists. Mary is a lens, like a magnifying glass. Her soul magnifies the Lord. Through the Virgin Mary, we see God more clearly. That's what all the saints do. They image forth the divine, who is above and beyond all images. And because of that lens effect, All good art is able to show forth something that's awesome. All art gives a hint of something greater than itself. Art is a kind of sign. In Plato's allegory of the cave, you have prisoners who merely see shadows on the cave wall, and they don't know that the shadows are made by three-dimensional objects and illuminated by the sun. And as one of them breaks out of the cave, he sees these different levels where he gets closer to the fullness of reality. And that's who God is, the fullness of reality. And all that we do on earth, especially everything we do that's creative, images that forth and becomes a way of magnifying the Lord, as Our Lady did in the Magnificat. It becomes a way of leading people to Him and to truth, beauty, and goodness. Now, having said all of that, and getting to a point where I'm going to wrap up my talk, pointing to the reality beyond, as I say, Eric Voegelin said, "One cannot prove reality by a syllogism. One can only point to it and invite the doubter to look." Here's a metronome, because you see, it's not enough just to be an artist. To be a good artist, again, any kind of art, writing, music, drama, requires discipline. I used to tutor, and one of my students wanted to learn the piano, and I tried to teach him the piano. He couldn't stand it because he wanted to sit down and play. He hated that darn metronome. He wanted to break the thing into pieces. And so, dear homeschooling parents who do so much for your young people, recognize that if you have a creative child, it's a charism. It's a gift from God. It's the signature of man. Recognize that their ability to be creative will open up the eyes of others, even if they're only funny, and make people laugh. Because when you laugh, you are seeing reality in a new and enlightening way. And then recognize as well that what they do, if they do it well, will ultimately magnify the Lord and bring people closer to God, even people who might not believe in God, including people like I used to be. This is my book, An Actor Bows, Showbiz, God, and the Meaning of Life. It's all about how I went from being an atheist to a Catholic. You can get that book, and you can find out more about me and what I teach from Classes with Kevin, classeswithkevin.com, classeswithkevin.com. I teach a ton of classes for Homeschool Connections, and I love intelligent and creative students. I teach acting, I teach philosophy, I teach literature, I teach creative writing, I teach comedy writing. So I'd love to meet some of your students, and hopefully I've given you at least a little bit of an insight into how important it is that you have creative children. Thanks for watching.